Hey everyone, welcome to my very first YouTube tutorial. My name is Connie, I'm 28 years old, I'm a hobby artist from Germany. So, I found myself being a bit frustrated after watching tutorials from professional artists because even though I learned something, I was still very far away from reaching their level. So I thought, why not make a channel where you can learn from me, but most of all with me? Because I'm still a beginning artist too. I just most recently found my art style, sort of, and I'm still very close to all the struggles that every beginning artist has. So, whatever problems you have with your art, feel free to comment below, even if it's really specific. I would love to see this channel become more of a exchange of problems and individual help, to have a community feeling, sort of, rather than just me telling you how to do art. So these were some of my more recent pieces, but let's get to our very first lesson. It's how to improve fast. Of course, I do not have a magic spell for you that will magically grant you all the skills in the world, but I do have a keyword for you, and that's understanding. It's super important that you know why you're drawing something. It may sound rather obvious, but I found myself going back to the basics every time I've been struggling with something or wanting to learn something new. I just always went back to the very beginnings and then build up from there. In this tutorial, I'll be trying to push you from the first to the middle picture, and let's get our reference up. This is a copyright-free picture. Especially when you're a beginning artist, you should use as many references as possible, and they should be real-life pictures instead of other drawings. As a child, I sometimes had those drawings which had a grid above them, and then there was an empty grid next to it, and you could try to copy the drawing on the left. This is exactly how to not learn how to do art, because you'll just be copying parts instead of getting the big picture. And that's exactly what you shouldn't do as an artist either. So if you use a reference, don't try to draw what you're seeing, but try to understand what you're seeing and then draw it. To start off, you will want to get a basic understanding of shapes and proportions. So the head is an oval shape. You can just draw over the drawing yourself to get a feeling for all the shapes. It doesn't have to look great, it's just to get an understanding at first. Next, you will want to see where all the facial features are located. So the eyes are somewhere in the middle of the face, and then the nose is in the middle of the lower half, and the lips are in the middle of the lower half of the lower half, and the eyes are located on that halfway line, basically one eye's width apart. Next up are the ears. If you connect the line, you can see where they're located. They end a bit above the eyebrows and start roundabout on the height of the tip of the nose. And you can fill in the rough positioning of the hairline. Last but not least, you can add the rough shape of the nose. It sort of has a kite shape starting at the middle of the face. And that's it. I drew a rough skull so we can check if our proportions are right, just so you understand what's behind that. You can see that here the positioning of the face is a bit too low in the head shape itself, but we'll fix that one later. Actually, let's make the sketch a bit bigger. You should try to always draw as big as possible, like not go giant, but have enough room to add all the details and to force yourself to think about what you're drawing. It can also force you to be a bit more fluent in your lines, because you have to cover bigger paths, and that's actually really helpful. I always had like really tiny sketches and was cheating myself through the details, but don't do that. Do yourself a favor and draw big. Continuing with the eyes, as we're here for the whys and hows, the eye consists of the eyeball inside your skull, which is then enclosed by the eyelids, which results in this almond-like shape. As we're going for the realistic style, you can also look at where the iris is positioned. If the subject looks straight at the camera, you will have it sort of resting on the lower lid and being cut off by the upper lid. Oh, and remember to draw both eyes at the same time, so you don't get that infamous second eye drawing problem, which I guess every artist knows. One thing I like to do with my eyes is adding a shadow and at the upper half of the iris, so it looks like the eyelashes are casting that shadow, and you will have a small highlight spot where the light still passes through and gets reflected on the eyes. The last thing we're missing are the eyelid creases. If you close one of your eyes and put your finger on it and then slowly open your eyes, you will have your eyelid move back into that fold, which is the crease, just to understand why you're drawing this. If you're drawing closed eyes, you will not have that crease to draw. And I almost forgot the eyebrows. I don't know why I tend to do that. Don't forget the eyebrows. Trust me, a face looks really weird without them. To position them, you can draw 3 help lines. They all start at the ala of the nose. I don't know, is it pronounced ala? I just googled it, never heard of the word. And you start at that point, and then for the beginning of the eyebrow, you connect that point with the inside of the eye. For the turning point or the highest point of the eyebrows, you draw a line through the pupil, and then for the end of the eyebrows, you connect that point with the outside of your eye. So in your drawing, you can just recreate those lines and then play connect the dots sort of to draw your eyebrows. I learned this technique from a beauty tutorial actually. They are a great source if you're struggling with like faces and proportions and shadows, as a makeup is basically there to tell you how to draw a pretty face, only on a real face, and we're trying to draw it on paper. So next up, we are tackling the nose. I always like to draw the tip of the nose as a little round shape, just to tell me where the highest point of the nose is. I guess we could do like an entire tutorial simply on noses because they're just so weird to draw, but I'll just cover the basics for now. So the nose is not just some wriggly line running through your face. It consists of those 2 nostrils and then the bridge between that connects to your lower lip. So it's basically, you can just look at your own nose in the mirror and try to understand like how the folds and the skin sort of work. But the basic element is always the 2 nostrils, which you can draw, and then the skin, which wraps around them, obviously. But really, don't worry about it too much because it's a nose, and people are not going to look at your nose in detail. People usually look at eyes and hair and pretty things like that. I don't think anyone focuses on a nose and thinks, hey, this looks odd or something. I don't know. It's really a topic for another tutorial, I guess. Let's skip to the mouth. Here you can also help yourself with some lines to see how broad would that mouth be, and copy those helping lines onto your sketch. And then you can just connect those lines. I personally like to add little shadows or dots at each end of the line to imitate the corners of the mouth. Lips also come in very different shapes and sizes. What you will often see is artists just drawing the upper lip, and here's the reason why. If you look at a face from the side and imagine that the light is coming from above, you will see that the upper lip is actually casting a shadow and therefore it's darker, and the lower lip mostly has like this glossy shine if you're drawing shiny lips, but it's a lot lighter, and so if you just draw the upper lip, you sort of have your shadows covered and don't run the risk of having lips look awkward, which they tend to do for some reason. Actually, that reason is that if you just draw the outline of your lips, it looks like some really weird makeup and not really natural. So instead, what you can do if you want to hint at the lower lip, you can add some shadows to the corners of the mouth, like I'm doing here. I like this as an effect for shadows and volume, actually. So this is it. We have our facial features done. We can now take a closer look at the actual face shape. This is basically where most artists get creative by altering the face shape later on, but as we said, we are going to start with the basics, start with the real thing. And the real thing is a skull, and it's covered in muscles and skin, and therefore gives us our head shape. So we have the skull, and then we have like the jaw as the lower part, which gives us some edges on the side. Later on you might want to go for a more oval face shape because it looks cuter or more appealing, but in the beginning we'll stick to those jaw lines. And that's also really helpful to know or to consider if you want to go for different angles of your face, like at which angle do you still see those jaw edges. This one actually helped me a lot when drawing guys. So actually my video deleted some of the steps between this, but again you can just look at the help lines which I drew here, like from the eyes connecting to the hairline and the corner of the mouth connecting to the jaw edges. Then you can just, step by step find your way through the shape of the face. When drawing hair, a good shortcut is to look at individual hairs or strands of hair and then hinting at them in your drawing. So this way it looks like there's a lot of hair, but you actually just drew a couple of streaks. Especially when drawing hair, try to be as fluent and free as possible. Hair always looks pretty if you just go a bit wild. Don't worry too much about details or getting everything right here. And we're almost done. We're just missing the neck. It basically just connects right down from the face, from the skull. Most of the time you will probably draw it a bit smaller because it just looks nicer. And here's one thing I like to do. Most of the times the light will be hitting the face from above, so the skull will be casting this sort of triangle shadow beneath the head. And I just like to add that one, no matter how much shading I do or not, because it makes the face stand out more. So now we can do a quick comparison of the initial piece and then the more advanced piece that I was trying to push you to. And I think the difference is rather obvious. I feel like learning to draw is sort of like learning a language. If you want to go to Spain for 2 weeks, you're fine with learning a couple of sentences. But if you want to move there, you want to learn the vocabulary, you want to learn the grammar, so you can speak freely. And that's basically how it is with art. You have to learn the basics, you have to learn the rules, and then you can bend them and you can create your own stuff. So I hope this tutorial was useful for you. Please let me know if it was too easy, too difficult, too confusing. Whatever it is, I'd love to hear thoughts. So thank you so much for watching, if you are still watching, and I'll hopefully see you in the next tutorial. Bye!